The Battle of Russia, 1943. In 1943, while battles raged across Europe and Asia, Hollywood released a film that tried to make sense of the chaos and human cost of war. The Battle of Russia was part of the United States government's Why We Fight series, a collection of films intended to educate soldiers and civilians about the global stakes of the Second World War. Directed by Frank Capra, already celebrated for classics like It Happened One Night, the film was more than propaganda. It was a carefully constructed effort to convey courage, resilience, and the harsh realities of a distant, yet crucial front, the Soviet Union's fight against Nazi Germany. Capra faced an enormous challenge. The Soviet Union was, to many Americans, a distant and mysterious ally, and its struggles were largely unknown outside Eastern Europe. The film opened with sweeping maps and archival footage of the German advance, the devastation of Leningrad, and the grueling winter that tested both soldiers and civilians. Unlike most Hollywood productions of the era, the Battle of Russia focused less on individual heroics and more on collective endurance. It highlighted the spirit of ordinary people, farmers, workers, and soldiers, who stood firm against an almost unstoppable enemy, enduring unimaginable loss yet never surrendering. Critics at the time acknowledged the film's unusual approach. Soldiers preparing for deployment reportedly found it illuminating. It offered insight into an ally whose contribution was critical but poorly understood. Capra combined narration, dramatic imagery, and a careful selection of newsreels to create a narrative that was both informative and deeply human. The Battle of Russia is often forgotten, overshadowed by the more glamorous or dramatic war films that followed, yet its significance endures. It reminds viewers that courage is not always found in spectacular heroics, but in the quiet perseverance of millions facing extraordinary circumstances. They were expendable. 1945. In 1945, as the world began to grasp the scale of the Second World War, John Ford released They Were Expendable, a film that celebrated courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Unlike many wartime films that focused on large-scale battles or glamorous heroics, this story followed a small group of American naval officers, the Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3, as they fought desperately in the Philippines against advancing Japanese forces. It was a tribute to quiet heroism, loyalty, and the bonds forged under fire. The film's production was unusual for its time. John Ford, already renowned for classics like Stagecoach and The Grapes of Wrath, enlisted actual Navy personnel and used authentic vessels to achieve realism rarely seen in Hollywood. The lead roles were played by Robert Montgomery and John Wayne, whose performances balanced authority with vulnerability. Montgomery portrayed Lieutenant John Brickley, a determined officer burdened by the responsibility of men's lives, while Wayne's Lieutenant Rusty Ryan embodied steadfast courage tempered by empathy. Together, their characters illuminated the human cost of war in a way that spectacle alone could not convey. They Were Expendable is particularly remembered for its honest depiction of loss. The squadron's boats were lightly armed, often outgunned, and the men faced near certain danger during missions. Ford did not shy away from portraying failure and sacrifice. One notable sequence shows the boats retreating under relentless enemy fire, highlighting both strategic brilliance and tragic inevitability. Ford reportedly insisted that the men's courage, rather than their victories, should be the emotional heart of the story. A contemporary review in Life magazine praised the film, noting, "It is not the size of the battle, but the character of the men that stays with you." The film depicts that heroism often exists in the shadows, uncelebrated but essential. Its attention to authenticity, coupled with a deep respect for the individuals who served, sets it apart from many of its contemporaries. The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946. In 1946, the Second World War had ended, yet its echoes reverberated in homes across the United States. The Best Years of Our Lives arrived at this moment, not as a story of battlefields or heroics, but as a profound meditation on returning home. Directed by William Wyler, the film explores the lives of 3 veterans as they struggle to reintegrate into civilian society, highlighting the psychological and social challenges faced by men who had experienced the war firsthand. The film starred Frederick March, Dana Andrews, and Harold Russell. the latter a real-life veteran who had lost both hands during the conflict. Russell's performance was groundbreaking. He brought authenticity and emotional depth that resonated deeply with audiences. His inclusion in the cast was deliberate. Wyler wanted to convey the realities of war beyond the battlefield, emphasizing that heroism included enduring trauma, adjusting to new physical limitations, and navigating personal relationships disrupted by years of service. The best years of our lives begins with the veterans returning to their hometown, each carrying invisible scars alongside their medals. March portrays Al Stephenson, a banker attempting to maintain normalcy while struggling to connect with his family. Andrews, Fred Derry, faces professional and emotional uncertainty, his wartime achievements clashing with the mundane expectations of peacetime life. Russell's Homer Parrish confronts the profound challenge of adapting to civilian life with a disability, symbolizing the quiet courage required to persevere. The film's narrative delicately intertwines their stories, emphasizing resilience, dignity, and the often overlooked costs of war. Contemporary critics praised the film for its sensitivity and realism. The film won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, cementing its place as one of the most poignant depictions of post-war adjustment in American cinema. The Best Years of Our Lives remains a timeless reminder that the consequences of war extend far beyond the battlefield. Its quiet heroism lies not in explosions or daring maneuvers, but in the resilience of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. In Which We Serve, 1942. In 1942, Britain stood at the height of the Second World War, and morale at home was as vital a battleground as the seas abroad. In Which We Serve, co-directed by Noel Coward and David Lean, was more than a film. It was a celebration of duty, unity, and the ordinary heroism of sailors who faced unimaginable danger. The film told the story of HMS Torrin, a Royal Navy destroyer, and the men who served aboard her, blending the harsh realities of naval combat with the personal lives that sustained these men through the conflict. The film's genesis was deeply personal for Coward, who also starred as Captain Kinross. He drew inspiration from real wartime experiences, interviews with sailors, and news reports, seeking to honor the sacrifices of the Navy while fostering a sense of national pride. Coward's collaboration with Lean, then a rising cinematic talent, resulted in a film that combined intimate character studies with sweeping battle sequences, a balance that allowed audiences to see both the scale of war and its human cost. In Which We Serve opens with a dramatic depiction of Torrin's final mission, intercut with flashbacks that reveal the lives, relationships, and values of the crew. Each sailor is presented as an individual, not a stereotype, highlighting courage, loyalty, and resilience in equal measure. The narrative emphasizes that heroism does not always come in acts of daring. Sometimes it is found in maintaining hope, discipline, and camaraderie amid chaos. Coward famously said of the film, "I wanted the audience to feel the pride and sorrow of men who gave their all, not because they were compelled, but because it was their duty." Critics and audiences alike responded to the film's authenticity. It became an emblem of British perseverance, praised for capturing the stoicism and humanity of its characters without resorting to melodrama. The film's impact was amplified by its release during a time when news of naval losses was frequent. It offered recognition and solace to countless families and servicemen. Today, In Which We Serve stands as a historical testament to the courage of ordinary men performing extraordinary acts of duty. Its resonance endures not through spectacle alone, but through the quiet dignity it affords to those who faced peril with unwavering resolve. The Great Escape, 1963. By the early 1960s, war films often leaned toward spectacle, but The Great Escape balanced excitement with a remarkable true story of courage. Released in 1963 and directed by John Sturges, it dramatized the daring mass breakout from Stalag Luft III, a German prisoner of war camp, during the Second World War. While the film is remembered for its thrilling sequences and ensemble cast, its historical significance is often overlooked. Beyond entertainment, it stands as a tribute to ingenuity, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of prisoners who refused to surrender hope. The film assembled a remarkable cast: Steve McQueen, James Garner, Richard Attenborough, and Charles Bronson each portrayed prisoners with distinct personalities and nationalities. Their camaraderie captured the essence of the real escapees, who represented multiple Allied nations working together under brutal conditions. McQueen's motorcycle chase became iconic, though it was largely fictionalized. Still, it symbolized the yearning for freedom that defined the prisoner's struggle. Attenborough's portrayal of the determined leader brought gravitas to the story, grounding the adventure with emotional weight. Historically, The Real Great Escape of March 1944 was both inspiring and tragic. Of the 76 men who tunneled out, only 3 reached safety. 50 were recaptured and executed by the Gestapo, an atrocity that shocked the world and underscored the brutality of Nazi reprisals. The film chose not to dwell on the executions but subtly acknowledged them, ending with a sobering note that contrasted with its otherwise adventurous tone. This balance allowed audiences to appreciate the triumph of courage without forgetting the human cost. Upon release, The Great Escape was both a critical and commercial success, praised for its tension, scale, and humanity. To this day, it remains one of the most beloved war films, though many forget its roots in real sacrifice. Rewatching The Great Escape today offers more than entertainment. It is a chance to reflect on the resilience of men who, even in captivity, refuse to be broken. 12 O'Clock High, 1949. Released in 1949, 12 O'Clock High offered one of the most unflinching looks at the psychological toll of aerial combat. Directed by Henry King and starring Gregory Peck, the film depicted the strain faced by American bomber crews flying dangerous missions over Europe. Unlike many war pictures that emphasized adventure, this film explored leadership, fear, and the breaking point of human endurance. Gregory Peck portrayed Brigadier General Frank Savage, a stern leader tasked with restoring discipline and effectiveness in a demoralized unit. At first, his methods appear harsh. He enforces strict rules, pushes men to their limits, and demands near perfection from his crews. Yet as the missions mount and losses rise, it becomes clear that Savage himself is not immune to the very pressures he imposes. His eventual breakdown, subtle, quiet, and deeply moving, illustrates the fragility of even the strongest leaders when burdened with impossible responsibility. What made 12 O'Clock High remarkable was its authenticity. The film was inspired by real experiences of the 8th Air Force during the Second World War. Former airmen praised its accuracy, noting its honest depiction of exhaustion, fear, and the camaraderie that bound crews together. The air combat sequences, created with stock footage from wartime missions, added to the realism, making audiences feel the peril of flying into enemy territory with no guarantee of return. Critics immediately recognized the film's depth. Gregory Peck's performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, solidifying his reputation as one of Hollywood's most versatile actors. The Story of G.I. Joe, 1945. When The Story of G.I. Joe premiered in 1945, audiences were still reeling from the realities of a global conflict that had touched nearly every household. Directed by William A. Wellman, the film sought not to glorify war, but to honor the everyday soldier, the infantryman, who endured mud, exhaustion, and fear on the front lines. Unlike many Hollywood productions of the time, it stripped away glamour and spectacle, presenting a stark portrait of men whose lives were defined by relentless struggle. The film was based on the wartime dispatches of journalist Ernie Pyle, whose plain-spoken columns captured the grit and humanity of ordinary soldiers. Burgess Meredith portrayed Pyle with quiet authenticity, while Robert Mitchum delivered one of his earliest and most powerful performances as Lieutenant Walker. Mitchum's portrayal of a compassionate yet weary leader earned him his first Academy Award nomination, and to many critics, it marked the arrival of a major new star. What set The Story of G.I. Joe apart was its unflinching realism. The soldiers are shown digging foxholes, trudging through endless marches, and confronting the loneliness of war. The film does not dwell on grand victories, but instead lingers on small, human moments. A letter from home, a moment of laughter, or a soldier's silent prayer before battle. These details reflected Pyle's belief that the true story of war lay not in strategy or politics but in the resilience of the men who fought it. At the time of release, audiences recognized the film's poignancy. For many viewers, especially returning veterans, the film mirrored their own experiences with remarkable fidelity. Today, the story of G.I. Joe deserves recognition as one of the most humanistic war films ever produced. The Dam Busters, 1955. In 1955, British cinema delivered one of its most celebrated war dramas with The Dam Busters. Directed by Michael Anderson, the film recounted the audacious real-life mission of the Royal Air Force's 617 Squadron, tasked with destroying German dams using an experimental bouncing bomb. The mission, known as Operation Chastise, took place in May of 1943 and required an extraordinary blend of science, courage, and precision flying. The story follows Dr. Barnes Wallace, played by Michael Redgrave, whose inventive mind developed the revolutionary bomb. His relentless determination to see his creation succeed became a central emotional thread of the film. Alongside him was Richard Todd as Wing Commander Guy Gibson, the young and resolute squadron leader who had to turn Wallace's vision into a perilous reality. Their partnership represented both the intellectual and human dimensions of war brilliance paired with bravery. What made The Dam Busters remarkable was its attention to detail. The filmmakers consulted actual veterans and incorporated technical accuracy that lent the film credibility and authenticity. The flying sequences, achieved without the benefit of modern special effects, remain thrilling to this day. More importantly, the film highlighted the immense risks faced by the airmen. Though the mission succeeded in breaching the dams, more than half of the squadron's aircraft failed to return, and 53 airmen lost their lives. At the time of release, audiences were captivated. A review in the Times praised it as a story told with both pride and sorrow, capturing the daring of a few who carried the hopes of many. It became one of Britain's most popular war films, remembered for its stirring march theme as much as its gripping drama. Today, The Dam Busters is more than an action story. It is a meditation on sacrifice and ingenuity, a reminder that innovation alone is not enough.